Hi everyone, we'll get started. We have Grace Nolan here who's going to be speaking about reflections on the creative process illustrated with watercolor painting. Can we have a round of applause, please?
All right, you can all hear me fine. Thank you for coming to this somewhat experimental talk. Let me introduce myself. So this is me in the mornings when I've woken up and just scrolled through Twitter to see the drama of the day. I do security at Google. I've done some talks on lockpicking, so some people might recognize me from that. I am also a PurpleCon organizer. This is a conference coming up in Wellington in November. It's about security and it's for developers and defenders. All right, so why am I doing this talk? Do you recognize this person, Bob Ross? So let's paint some goddamn happy little trees. So let's just switch to camera view. All right, let me know if you can't see this very well. So first what I'm doing is I am prepping the paper with water. I think it's really important to make a plan before you start working. And this is kind of, the same as when you're doing programming. You think ahead, maybe write some pseudocode and have an idea of what it is that you're wanting to do. So the style that I'm doing is called wet on wet. So it makes it very kind of bloom-esque, which you'll see in a moment. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm painting. You can figure it out when you've see the end. All right. The thing that happens with watercolor is that you don't really know exactly how it's kind of going to turn out. Water has this really weird way of behaving where it doesn't always do what you think it's going to do. So I'm just going to put some purple. Purple's a pretty good color. It's one of my favorites. So yeah, please bear with me. Can you see all right? Oh yeah, it's a little bit shiny. Yeah, not too bad. So thank you for your patience in watching. So these colors, as I put them down in kind of these weird splodges, are going to slowly blend together in a way that I can't predict. They're just going to do what they want to do. And that's okay. You just go along with it, and that's part of the magic, All right, so maybe we'll just leave that for now. I think, when I've been painting, I kind of think about how it reminds me of programming at times. There's different kinds of paper. So this one is very textured, which means that the paint absorbs much better than a flat surface, where when it's a flat surface, the paint just kind of sits on top. And kind of blends very differently. And I think this is kind of being familiar with your hardware and knowing what you can expect when you try different things. Right, I think I'm just gonna leave that for the time being so it can just do its thing. I'm going to add a little bit of this. Okay. All right, so this is just going to like hang out. The paint will change as it dries. And we're just going to hope for the best that it's going to turn out okay. So at this point, I kind of get a little bit stressed, which kind of like, I don't know if you can tell, maybe it's hard when I'm presenting, so you might expect like some amount of stress anyway. But as it kind of gets near the end, I'm kind of like, oh, I want to add things here, or should I be adding stuff to these other places? Is this going to turn out how I think it's going to turn out? And I really feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, and like, you know, the paint behaves in a way that's like different sometimes to what I might expect it to, similar to like, you know, the errors that I get sometimes when I'm coding and I do not understand what's going on. And sometimes this compounds to the point where I start thinking like, can I even do the arts at all? And same with computers, like, can I even code? Like, why am I doing this if it's so hard? Which kind of brings me to the point of this talk. When I was doing painting as a hobby, I noticed how I was feeling and how, you know, I would start out with this blank page and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to create something. You know, I have this anticipation. I have a belief around like, you know, I can do this for the most part. There's a little bit of doubt, but like, you know, it's a clean slate, so it's okay. And then I start adding things. I write out some pseudocode. I start sketching out some, you know, functions. And then maybe it's not quite shaping up how I might expect it at first. And that starts to like stress me out a little, and then I start getting errors, starting to try and test it, and I noticed like the curves of like these emotions that I had were the same as when I was painting, but when I was coding it was much more severe because it's like for my career, right? So my whole career hinges on my ability to like write this functionality. At least that's, you know, that's how it feels. So why do I do these stressful things? If like coding's so stressful to me, why do I do it? Why am I in this career? And to do that, I'm going to give you some context. So fortunately, I'm not going to start out from when I was born. I'm just going to talk about from when I was looking at doing design, because I really liked the idea of having these cool, funky, interactive art projects that could teach people meaning and could, you know, convey an idea of something that we should be caring about as a society. And I was like, damn, that sounds so awesome. And I started doing design, and I did a coding paper, and I found it really, really hard. And I realized that if I were to continue doing design, and then whenever I wanted to do one of these like interactive art projects, I'd probably get avoidant. I think that I would not want to do it because it would be hard and painful. And I realized that I wasn't really going to be able to achieve the things that I wanted to if I didn't spend more time doing what I found difficult, so it was no longer a limitation on my creativity. So I got indecisive, and in that time I went to this conference called KiwiCon, which is a hackathon in New Zealand, and that really inspired me to like want to learn more about the technical aspects of computers and like really understand what's going on. So I changed into computer science, knowing that it was going to be really hard. I had some experience coding at this point. I knew that it was going to be quite miserable, and sure enough it was. I used to be at the point where I'd like cry every time I was like working on coding projects, and it was kind of shitty. But I managed, obviously I've made it here, right? So I managed to like work through these feelings. I don't constantly cry at work, which is great. So I want to go through an example of how I kind of got through these feelings, or like managing, like self-regulating my feelings like while doing this work. So the example I'm going to use is at when I was working on a Django API. And for some reason, I wasn't getting the data back that I wanted to. I was just running, I wasn't getting anything back. I wasn't able to really test it that well, or I had no idea what was going on. And I knew that I should ask for help, but I was starting to get really stressed, and I felt maybe I could just spend 20 more minutes working on this and see if I can get any further. And in that time, I would start kind of spiraling out and being can I even do this career if I'm stuck on writing this goddamn API for this app? Maybe there's no point to this, and if I can't do this career, then what else am I going to do? I clearly like computers. They're the thing that I want to do. So it created a lot of oh no feelings. So thanks to webcomicname.com for their wonderful oh no comics. Definitely recommend having a look. So what do I do with these oh no feelings? Do I keep working? Do I keep trying to hit my head against this brick wall? Or do I give up? Do I stop? Do I take a break or go home and try again tomorrow, or run away from my problems? And how far can I run away from them for? I'd really like to run away from my problems. I love to do that. So really, I'm not in a good space to make decisions. So the important thing to do first is to de-escalate. And so for me, one of the things that I might do is I will grab a glass of water and I will sip that glass of water for 20 minutes. And all I will do is try and think about that glass of water. I'll look at how the light moves through the glass and how cool the water feels when I drink it. And really kind of even you can smell the water is very fresh, and just kind of pull all of my senses to that until I'm not distressed anymore. So that's a really important first step. The next thing is to accept the situation. So, I am currently working on this API. I haven't asked for help, and it's been 4 days already of me feeling terrible. And this really reminds me of doing watercolor painting, where you just have to let the water do its thing. You can't fight against it. The more that you fight against it, the worse it's going to get. So really, it's really important to accept where things are at and to move from that place. So you kind of get to a decision crossroads after this. So this is when I revisit those feelings of do I give up, go home, or do I keep going? And there's a couple of ways to try and help make this somewhat ambiguous situation into one that's a little bit clearer. And so one of the ways that I do this is I look at what these two different things feel like. What does it feel like when I'm in the give up zone? What does it feel like when I think about keeping on going? What do those different states feel like to me? And it was a way of going into maybe a better example of what this feels like. I'm going to show you a couple of drawings. One that I did when I was feeling really awful in high school, which kind of illustrates what my mood is somewhat like at those times. And then on the other side, I have this painting, which is, I did this project called the 100 Days Project, where you do a creative thing every day for 100 days, and this is day 100. This is me on the last day of having made it through doing a watercolor painting every day. So I really wanted to capture that kind of free feeling. And I think these two really are the perfect examples, right? The next thing I can do now that I have this kind of data about myself is I can look at my values. What's more in line with my values? Is that self-care is really important, so sometimes giving up and taking a break is important. That's more of a short-term thing though, perhaps. I'll probably still have that problem the next day that I go into work. It's not going to have magically disappeared. So I think about what I'm trying to do, and at that time I was wanting to upskill. Like I wasn't sure if being a developer is what I really wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure on the exact part of, computer science, I guess. And I'd already given up on doing interactive art projects because I realized how awful it is to code anything that's like graphic relating. So I decided that actually I really definitely did not want to do that stuff. So I'd already ruled it out, thank goodness. And I realized, I wanted to upskill. I wanted to like get better. I wanted to prove to myself that I can work through these things. So by using these measures, I can decide that actually it's better for me to keep going with this problem, to get help, to find out what information I'm missing, because pretty much in every case, the reason why I get stressed is because I don't have all the information. I don't know how the system is working at that time. I haven't looked at the right logs. I haven't put in print statements or whatever it is. So I realized I can actually just do some information gathering and work through this problem, and I'll feel much better. It's in line with my values. I can be like the lady that I painted for on day 100, and everything is much better. The next thing to do is to commit to that decision. So even when I'm facing doubt again by revisiting that problem, it's really important for me to stick with that, to know that I've already weighed up, what I wanted to do. I looked at the options, and there's no reason for me to go back to there. Life is short. You just got to keep going. So once I made a decision, it's really good to commit to it. So now we're just going to go back to the painting. So if you see, it's kind of changed a bit. It's not so shiny anymore. It has dried. So next, I'm going to make up this dark color. I have a little bit on my palette. In watercolor painting, you don't really find black. What you find is you blend colors together. This color was too much of that one. Oh well, let me just start again. Sometimes. So it turns out, in real life, you very rarely see pure black. Most of the time you're seeing shadows, which is I don't even think that you can really see what I'm doing, but I can move it over and you can kind of see. Seems a bit risky, doesn't it, holding this over my painting? But yeah, no, I'm sure it's going to be fine. Trust me, I've done this so many times before where the paint has leaked through. So you actually mix this orangey terracotta red color with this kind of blue, and somehow adding those things makes black. And I was really bamboozled by this when I first came across it. I was surely this is not real. How is it that that's how you make black? But it turns out you can just blend any colors that are opposite to each other, and then you'll get some kind of black. So you could blend purple and yellow, and you'll get this kind of very warm, kind of brown, shadowy color. And this kind of really blew my mind when I was kind of starting out. So when I was starting out, I just bought a black color, like a fool, and thought, this is surely how I'm going to do this. But it's not the way. I also found, when I first started painting watercolors, which was in high school, I got a set, I really just wanted to create things. I just wanted to create what I wanted to create, and I wanted to do really cool fantasy paintings. And they always kind of turned out not what I imagined them to be. And then I left the hobby for a while. I stopped doing it. And eventually I figured out that if I actually follow what the artists are saying, then it goes a lot better for me. I can learn the techniques that the wise people before me have, spent time centuries like figuring out, and those work a whole lot better, funnily enough. So then I kind of moved into a state where I actually just recreated images that other people have done. And I found that this was like a much better way of going about it. I found that my skills were improving a lot faster. And I'm starting to get to the point where I can create things that, like from the top of my head, which is pretty awesome. Like, I just didn't really think, after I'd kind of given up on that idea, I thought like, oh, well, looks like I just can't, create original designs. But yeah, it turns out that, listening to your elders can be pretty good. I think maybe this is the equivalent of reading the words on the blog post, not just looking at the coding chunks. All right, so I think this looks like a painting now. Does this look like a picture? Yeah, awesome. Nice one. I always feel so good when I get to the end, like the finish. Like this is the best part, and it also happens when I'm coding as well. Like I'll be working on something, and I spend all that time being stressed, and then suddenly it's all fitting together, and it looks like a whole piece, and I'm like, I can't believe that I've got this far. And I want to keep going, because at that point it feels really good. I want to keep adding the paint, and I want to keep adding features because I feel good about this project now. But really the important thing is to stop. One of the worst things that you can do with a watercolor painting is overpaint. Watercolor gets its vibrancy from the white paper underneath. So the more layers that you put on top of it, the murkier that it gets. And you can really, I've certainly destroyed some paintings in my time because of this, as well as made coding projects like unmanageable and tried to put in all these features that were terrible. And then I hated the project again. So I've got to stop when it's good. Next thing is to allow appreciation time. So be like, hells yeah, I just finished a painting and it looks cool, and now I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to send it to all my friends, and they have to like it because they like me and they're my friends. And same with coding projects. So work being going to my mentor or my manager being like, I did the thing, how good is it? My code got approved. Actually spending some time reminding myself that I managed to work through it. I think when it comes to working on coding projects, this is something that I still could do more of. Sometimes I forget that I've even done things. Like in university, I wrote a multitasking kernel for a paper, and I completely forgot about it. And then years later, I remembered, and I'm like, that's actually pretty cool. That's kind of hardcore. But I just didn't think about it. So far I've talked about reactive measures to the way that I was feeling, and self-soothing, and working through kind of ambiguous situations. So this slide is about being proactive. And what I mean by this is that there will be life events that happen. So, you might move house, or, a family member might fall sick. You might fall sick. Things like this can happen, and they will cause stress in your life. There's just no other way around that. So it's really important to make a plan to know what you're going to do in these situations, know who you can talk to, know, make sure that you have like the finances to support you in these times, or at least, knowing people who can help you out, and working with your community being like your friends, your parents, even other people who, from work, or anyone that you have like a somewhat like good relationship with, and you'd be surprised the people that will come and help you when you're in need. So I really wanted to include this because it's like, this is a really important aspect going forward. I think particularly for people who have experience with like mental illness and stuff like that. So the key takeaways. Or the actual key takeaways. So reflect on how you work, not just on coding projects, but also like noticing how you feel if you like go to the gym and you're lifting really heavy things, or if you're like building some IoT device, or if you're helping somebody else with some project, or crafting, or whatever it is, baking. Notice the points where you start getting stressed. It's really important to self-soothe, and it's okay to do that. I think maybe we feel like, other people should be comforting us, but, it's really important for us to do that. Talk to other people about how you feel. It's totally okay to do that. I think, we may hesitate because we don't want to burden people with all of our nonsense. But it's such a key thing. Like, I love it when people open up to me, because I feel like, I can listen and provide the support that I can, and I feel really privileged that they've like trusted me with this information. And that's how I feel when somebody shares stuff with me. So when I'm talking to other people about my feelings, I also like remind myself that, maybe that's how they're feeling right now, and that I'm not actually burdening them. And you'd be surprised where there's like common ground. If you really like the sort of stuff that I've talked about, look up acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. This is a thing that's like really helped me, and I found really good because it's very practical. It's not about like soul searching the meaning of life. It's about what you can do next. Like, I think it is important, to think about the meaning of life, but like, I don't know about you, but I can absolutely be lost for hours thinking about these kind of problems. So sometimes it's really good for me to, be moving forward and being practical. I also wanted to credit the artists who I had inspiration for my painting. Mine's a much more simplified version, of course. Chantal Jordan is awesome. She has lots of really beautiful wet-on-wet style artwork. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you so much, Grace. We're not going to be taking questions for this talk. We don't have the time. But thank you, Grace. Here is a lovely cup for you.
Thank you.
And can we just have another round of applause for Grace and the fantastic photo?